Hello and thank you for joining me on episode 15 of TPAS Member Chat. I'm Ray Watson, the comms manager for TPAS, and today I'm going to be speaking to Michael Newey, who is the Group Chief Executive of Broadland Housing Group, a member of TPAS. Michael is well known within the sector, well known at TPAS, seen as a safe pair of hands down there at Broadland. He's built a long career and particularly known for his expertise in surveying. But it's not about Michael and his career that I want to talk about, of course. It's more about TPAS's very much interest in how organisations right now are navigating the challenges that COVID-19 has presented, and in particular, how them as an organisation, as staff and residents are working together to navigate the challenges, particularly the financial, the mental and the physical challenges that COVID-19 has created for all of us. So thank you very much for watching, and please do listen in to my interview with Michael. Hello Michael, and welcome to TPAS Chat.
Hi there.
So let's just start by talking about you, as I always do on these episodes. Tell us a bit more about home, and can you give us a picture of how life has been affected by the pandemic for you?
Right. Well, I live in the middle of Norfolk. I actually live almost right in the middle of Norfolk, down a track in a sort of rambling old cottage, which definitely wouldn't meet the decent home standard, which is a bit of a pity. Currently, I'm sharing it with my wife and two adult children. My wife and one of my children are working from home, and my son finished his degree last week and is sadly now unemployed, having had his job offer put on hold until after the pandemic's resolved. I think that the biggest thing that the pandemic has shown me with lockdown is how broadband has become a utility, a bit like electricity and water and gas and things like that. When you're trying to share 6 megabits per second with two other people who are also video conferencing, I'm getting very used to looking at people in pixelated form.
Yeah, of course. That's very, very stretched broadband, I should imagine, in your household.
It is. It's why actually today, because I've got lots of video conferencing meetings and of course talking to you, I've relocated to one of our closed offices nearby in Dereham, where we've got good Wi-Fi and good broadband and even a mobile phone signal.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to then start with our chat with a very wide question, if I may. What services have slowed down or stopped, and what services have you really ramped up at Broadland during the lockdown?
Well, I think that the winding down, I'll begin by saying it is much easier to stop things than to restart them. Mm-hmm. So back in March, when we actually closed our offices the week before, on the Thursday before the Prime Minister announced lockdown on the 23rd, we moved to an emergency and urgent repair service only. So we put on hold our routine repairs and we put on hold all our planned works. We carried on estate services because we recognised that actually for mental health well-being, actually seeing the sort of shared gardens and things like that getting more and more untidy actually isn't very good, and we felt that it was safe to do estates work. And we've ramped up really on tenancy support, on benefits advice, understanding that lots of our tenants, their circumstances have changed. We've seen that with a lot of tenants telling us they're being furloughed, but equally telling us that they're moving over to universal credit. We've seen a real peak of that. And actually being able to give advice and support and helping people through the benefit system, especially those who perhaps haven't accessed it before or recently and haven't got great digital skills. So I think in those 2 points, I would say ramping down repair service and doing what is emergency and urgent that really affects somebody's ability to live in their home, and making sure that we're providing our tenants with the right support and the right advice. And actually that also moves into being clear with all our tenants about what's going on. So I wrote to every single tenant back in April, explaining what was going on, explaining the pressures that we were under, explaining how we were changing our services, because I thought it was really important for us to be open and transparent about what was going on, rather than leaving them to guess what their landlord might be deciding to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's wonderful to hear. You've actually brings me nicely to a report that's just been published by our friends at TPAS Cymru, who've ran a very interesting report into tenant worries as the lockdown eases, particularly very relevant right now as it's easing at quite a rate. The tenants' top turns are, which you've already talked about, the financial concerns. but also what came out was physical and mental concerns, which is actually a universal worry for us all. I mean, you've already discussed, your own household there and the issues of having worked with your son. What kind of activities are Broadland carrying out for residents and staff to support these kind of issues?
Well, we're trying for the staff side. We've got a very strong team of mental health champions. We've got a sort of staff consultative committee called CARE. We've got the mental health champions. We've got a strong HR team. And for the staff side, we've been doing very regular messaging. And what's been really important is messaging not from directors, but from each other. So, for example, directors excluded, but on a Friday afternoon at 4:00, there's a drop-in on Teams for anybody that wants to just chat with the mental health champions and with CARE members. And everyone knows that no member of the executive or senior management can be there. So people are being very honest, but they're also providing one-to-one support. For our tenants, one of the things that we did, where we know people are likely to be more vulnerable or by either disability or by age, we made contact with them and reassured them. And there's a lot of befriending calls. So where a tenant said, well, actually, I don't have many people, we've offered to provide support in collecting shopping, collecting prescriptions. And where tenants just want a befriending call, either once a week or once a fortnight, we're doing that. And actually, what's really good about that is all sorts of staff across the organisation have engaged with that. So we had some people who were shielding, but were really quite happy to spend their day on the telephone talking to tenants who were also shielding. So it's been, I wouldn't say there's been a one model that fits out all. We've tried to look at it from an individual point of view, and where we know people need support, we've tried to be there for them.
Oh, that's brilliant. That sounds like a really good mutually beneficial matching scheme you've got going on there, Michael.
Oh yeah, I think there's been some good friendships actually created between some of the people, the staff in the organisation and tenants that they've never actually met face to face.
And I want to talk about recovery plans because a couple of members of your staff are part of our national network, and the national network are very much talking about in the last week or so about recovery plans and inputting into those plans. How are you going about forming your plans in how you're going to bring back services on track, and how are you doing that alongside residents?
So I think the primary area and probably the biggest concern for our residents has been the repair service. And I said a moment ago that we were completely clear about what we were closing down and why we were closing it down. We then also shared with them where we expected to be at the end of the lockdown and how large a backlog we could end up with. And so what we then did 2 weeks ago was we went out to our tenants and consulted them on our plans for reactivation of the full repair service. We did an electronic survey. We on this instance, we didn't write to everybody. We contacted everybody on either their mobile phone through a text message or an email, as well as Facebook and Twitter. And that gave us great feedback because whilst we had come up with plans about how we would work through the backlog, categorising the routine repairs into 5 different groups and dealing with each group in turn on a geographical basis rather than just a first come first served basis, we were in a strange, before lockdown, we were in the strange situation that some of our operatives would be spending almost 25% of their time driving between jobs. And if you're trying to do a catch up, that doesn't work. And over 80%, our lowest result on any individual question was 83% support. But later this afternoon at 5:30, I'm doing a Zoom call to which 87 tenants have signed up for, to talk through the results of the survey and to seek their further views on some of the issues where they indicated they didn't necessarily agree with our approach. They thought there were some different ways. So I think it comes back to that, what I said earlier about being open and transparent and being quite clear, recognising they're the experts living in their houses and that we're providing a service to them, so we need to hear their views. I would also mention that there's something about reactivation which is beyond Broadland, but where Broadland needs to be part of. So we know that there's an awful lot of people who moved nationally into bed and breakfast and hotel accommodation back in March when the government moved rough sleeper provide funding for rough sleepers to move into somewhere safer and more secure so they wouldn't contract COVID. The real concern that we have is that funding is going to come to an end and people will go back onto the street. Broadland's been a member of Homes for Cathy since the beginning, and we were very, very concerned about that. So we're trying to work with our local authority partners and with other housing associations and with Crisis to see how we can be part of the solution where people don't go back to the street, but actually they're provided with semi-permanent or temporary accommodation, but with clear plans for support and clear plans for move on. I also said at the beginning, the last thing I'll mention under this would be trying to open our offices again. And I think for the staff team, that's the most difficult one. Broadland has about 130 staff working from home today. We've worked out that even our head office, under the COVID secure arrangements, could probably only cope with about 24, 25 people in the office at any one time. And so there's a big issue for us about how we support staff when we're actually sharing with them that they're likely to be working at home until next year, and how for some of them that's quite a tough ask. For some of them, their own well-being, their own mental health has been stretched by the challenge of working alone or working at home. Perhaps younger members of staff going back to live with mum and dad and finding it quite difficult without socialisation. So we're also having to put in plans to support those, and also to work out some way to ensure that those that need to come back to the office for their own well-being can, but also an environment where some other people who just need to pop into the office on a regular basis can also do that safely and in a way that's COVID secure.
Mm-hmm. I think we're all coming around to the idea that, this is going to be a lot longer in our lives than we initially thought.
Absolutely.
So that leads me nicely actually to the next question about, it's safe to say that every company, every organisation, every household will have changed from this experience. How do you think your organisation will have changed kind of culturally and practically? I know we've talked about a little bit around that already, but is there anything more that you want to say?
I think the biggest cultural change from an organisational point of view, which probably affects both staff and tenants, is recognising that there are digital solutions that mean you don't have to be in the same place at the same time. So, if you'd asked me at the tail end of 2019 whether this function or that function or the other function, whether it's finance or customer service or whatever, could all go and work from home, I would have thought it was a real stretch. And I couldn't see how it worked. But the reality was that by the end of March, all these people were working at home. So you have to question, why would we draw people back to the office on a full-time basis if actually they've been productive and delivered the right outcomes working from home? Equally, we've been able to engage with many more tenants, funnily enough, using a digital form than calling meetings. The idea that a tenant consultation event has to be in a church hall, a village hall, or one of our offices, and that's where we engage with people, when you can actually have a Zoom call like I'm having later today, which potentially will have 80 tenants on the line at the same time, and they're spread out over a whole of our operational area, which is Norfolk and North Suffolk. That's really powerful. So I think the biggest cultural change is to recognise we said that digital was by default, and actually now I think we've recognised that digital is default, and that would be the biggest structural change in what we do.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground in this 11 minutes, Michael. So I'm going to ask you the last one now, which I've asked most people, is an opportunity for a shout out, really. Is there any organisation or tool or person that you've just really relied upon through this crisis?
I'm going to shout out to the staff at Broadland, actually. 99.9% of them have shown massive commitment to our tenants, to each other, and that's been spectacular, and also to the organisation, ensuring that Broadland didn't fall over. We are people businesses. We own and manage bricks and mortar to provide people with homes, but we can only do that effectively with the people that we employ. And I have to say our team's been absolutely fantastic, and I've never felt, I've been here 17 years, and I've never felt prouder of the staff team at Broadland.
And so you should be. You've got a very strong reputation for your resident involvement as well, and very, very good team there. So thank you so much for your time, Michael.
Well, thank you.